Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading podcast about all things Charles Band. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, coming to you from the Chunky Chicken here in Brooklyn, New York. But listeners, do not fret because I am not alone. I am not alone, but I want to know what other creepy kid is playing this game of war with me today.
Well, locked up in a dream sequence full of clocks, it's me, Steve Guntley, coming here from Austin, Texas. This is the podcast that's all about horned babies, dick-stabbing dolls, and an inordinate amount of cheek biting. That's because this is a podcast about demonic toys. Right off the bat, I want to say a movie I thought had a bigger footprint than it does. Like, the sequels to this movie are kind of few and far between, which I had it in my headcanon that this was as prolific as Puppet Masters, or at least held up on the same level. And I don't think it's quite there, but this is still going to be an interesting one to talk about. And luckily, we have somebody here to help us sort through all the various evil jacks in the boxes or baby oopsie daisies.
That's right. We have a very special guest today who is a satirist who has regularly appeared in the Boston Accent, Hard Drive, the Hard Times. I know we always see funny articles from the Hard Times, McSweeney's. Recently, he's contributed a horror comic story for Zenoscope Entertainment's anthology called Grim Tales of Terror Quarterly, Back to School. I know I love the way that sounds. I'm sure you all love the way that sounds. I'm talking, of course, about Mr. Dan Bookbinder. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about demonic toys.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Glad to be here. I have been petitioning to get on the show because I love the concept so much. Jared and I go back just from doing Simpsons trivia, and our paths have crossed in kind of different ways, mainly from doing Simpsons trivia in Brooklyn, and also being on a Facebook group for a comedy podcast that has half like very entertaining memes and half people exercising their personal trauma. So
Funny
yeah.
how you always join those groups. It's like, oh, I like this podcast. I'm going to go in here. Oh, wait, I'm making lifelong friends and also learning intimate details about strangers.
That's really the way that group runs.
It's
You nailed
very whiplashy how that goes. But yeah, I just love the idea of going through the Charles Band catalog.
There's certainly a lot to dig into. What is your first? Oh yeah, sorry.
I just want to say that, like, when Steve and I first floated this idea to each other, I think the initial time that it was brought up, we were kind of like, oh, we have read It Came from the Video Aisle. We are reading Confessions of a Puppet Master. Should we? No, we can't do this. There wouldn't be an audience for this. Surely there wouldn't be an audience for this. And here we are. And not only do we enjoy doing it every week, but we've had, as listeners will find out as these things continue to drop, lots of amazing guests who've wanted to stop in and do episodes on full moon movies that they feel very, I guess that they have a lot of admiration for and a lot of nostalgia for. And Dan, we have like typically an introductory question that we like to ask guests when they come on the show. And so I will send this question over to you because I think our listeners all want to know, can you shit your pants? Because Steve and I, we can walk, we can talk, we can podcast, and we can shit our pants.
If a bear hits me with a bat in the knees, I definitely will shit my pants.
I am obviously just kidding. Our introductory question is we want to know, you obviously, if you have an affinity for this particular movie or Full Moon in general, we're learning that this fandom or interest in fringe cinema is something that has started with a lot of our listeners from a young age. So give us a little bit of your history with low budget exploitation horror movies. What hooked you? When did you learn that it was something that you were going to not just be a casual observer of, but put in the time to watch things like Demonic Toys?
Well, I think there's been with all your guests, a lot of similarities in us elder millennials trips to the video store and whatnot. But I was a very scared little kid, but I was obsessed with learning about like horror and monsters. I don't know if you guys remember, if you had these in your public library, the Crestwood monster books, or like these orange covers, black and white books that were just like about the various, mostly like universal monsters.
Oh yes, yes, I did
yeah.
have these. I forgot they had that name, but yeah, we did have these.
Yeah, and I would love those, love scary stories to tell in the dark and
Of course.
in a dark room. But like, yeah, because books couldn't like jump out and say boo and do the jump scares, so I felt safer with that. But had probably like the key memory was watching Aliens for the first time and seeing the beginning where Ripley is having a flashback or a nightmare of the alien popping out of Xenomorph popping out of her stomach, and I was just nope, and then went downstairs and watched one of the first episodes of The Simpsons. So that was like, okay, this is
A real
tattooed
palate
in my brain.
cleanser.
Yeah, and then oh, just scared of everything. Like there was also in the late 80s was Jim Henson had like a Muppets show, like pre-TGIF. There was, I think it was called Muppets Tonight.
Yes.
And then the second hour was like the Storyteller, which was the creepiest thing ever.
Storyteller was dope. Yeah. John Hurt. Yeah.
I have not gone back to that because like there's like a guy playing cards with little devil puppets, and that like traumatized me.
Yeah, the Storyteller was awesome, and we've never brought this up before between Steve and myself on or off mic, so I'll ask it now. But were you guys sort of traumatized by Welcome to Pooh Corner also?
I've never seen Welcome to Pooh Corner. Is that where like the live action Winnie the Pooh, where like people in costumes? Okay, yeah, I've never seen that one.
Man, yeah, you want to talk about something that was very creepy that was directed at kids. Like it sounds exactly like I reacted the way Dan reacted to the Storyteller, but I apologize for interrupting you, Dan.
No, I'll use this for all my therapy regarding horror. But yeah, the list goes on and on. I think if I was told it was supposed to be scary, I'd be scared of it. But in my regular video watching as a kid, Ghostbusters and Gremlins were always there, and not scared of that at all. But in terms of like, I would go through the video aisles and read horror boxes. Like I said, like reading was not scary.
The print can't hurt you.
Yeah, but so I'm a big like concept person, and the videos that stood out were Child's Play 2 with, I think it's the one with Chucky with the Jack in the Box as
the hedge clippers,
clippers around it.
Iconic.
Sleepaway Camp, because they incorporated into the back of the box like a letter that gets interrupted by a murder. And then I think this has come up before, but dolls. And I just wanted to show something off on this video podcast. I have this like what's called like a tipple glass from one of the Dismember the Alamos.
Amazing.
That has dolls on it. But yeah.
See, look at that. You came prepared.
Because that was one of yours too, right, Jared? That was one of your like video boxes that freaked you out.
The ones that got me the most in the beginning were dolls, monkey shines. Child's Play 2 was a big one. I was already really into horror by the time Child's Play 2 came out, though, so I think I was more excited by the theme. But really, the one that did it for me was this was the first VHS box art. Now, I've told the story before about Dream Warriors being the first movie because of the giant Freddy Krueger cardboard standee. This was based solely on VHS box alone. The one that drew me in where I went, what is that? Was Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, Part 5, with the glowing pink lights coming out of the hockey mask on the front.
Okay.
That was the one for me where I went, there's nothing inherently scary about that cover, but there's something lurking under it. And I didn't know at the time that it was not Jason. Spoiler alert to anyone who has not seen this
Yeah.
38-year-old movie, but
Yeah.
you know, it's not Jason, and it's also it is a very sleazy, very smutty, maybe like the most gross of all of the Friday the 13th in that capacity. And I didn't know that at the time.
That's the one that was directed by a former like porn director,
Danny
right?
Steinman, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Interesting tangent there is that was the first Friday the 13th movie I saw.
Me too.
Wow.
Yeah,
too.
and the twist, I don't want to spoil it. It's just that Roy was the killer was like blew my mind because I didn't watch like Freddy and Jason and Chucky were the icons of the era, and I would hear them like kind of like as campfire stories around the playground. So hearing a kid poorly describe like the Freddy takes over a power glove and there's a comic book of Super Freddy was much scarier than it ever happened.
It would have to be based on how those movies are glorified Looney Tunes cartoons.
I always remember kids describing things that were happening in the Freddy movies, and I always assumed they were making them up. Like, especially the Power Glove bit. I thought for sure this is just some weird kid making up like bits that weren't in an actual movie, because kids were always doing that. They would describe some horrific scene and they'd either exaggerate it or misremember it or just make it up whole cloth. But
I remember
most of the stuff that was described to me, which almost exclusively happens in Freddy's Dead, is all very real.
Yeah, so you were a couple years behind me when I discovered Dream Warriors and then subsequently The Dream Master, which I saw in the theater.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Which was amazing. I was a kid and it was the 80s and you were allowed to do that kind of thing. But I remember telling friends in elementary school, like, oh, he's got knives for fingers and he literally pulls a guy's veins and tendons out and walks him around like a marionette puppet. And you know, of course, it's like, oh, no way. So then the kids had to come to my house. They had to see for themselves on the movie, and then they had to go tell their parents that they had nightmares. And then my mom had to get angry phone calls. And this was the whole thing, which I think I've said on mic before. Yeah. Steve, I love how I was totally the enabler. I like how you said that there were so many concepts in these movies that could be described. Let's attempt to describe the concept of this movie.
Yeah, let's get into
fire off some stats, Steve.
Let's get into Demonic Toys a little bit. So Demonic Toys was released on March 12th, 1992, so it's a very early full moon film. It's directed by Peter Manoogian and written by David S. Goyer, who I will have much to say about in a moment. It stars Tracy Scoggins, Bentley Mitchum, Michael Russo, Jeff Weston, Daniel Cerny, Ellen Dunning, and Pete Schrum. So obviously the biggest name to come out of this is David S. Goyer, who...
it's not Robert Mitchum's grandson?
Somehow not. Yeah, somehow Robert Mitchum's failed grandson did not pop off of this movie. No, David S. Goyer, you would never really expect watching this movie that the guy who wrote Demonic Toys would one day be like the highest paid screenwriter in Hollywood and like a major executive. Goyer
move over, Esterhaus.
Yeah, exactly. He is the new Esterhaus. He had just gotten his start in Hollywood. He'd sold 2 scripts to Jean-Claude Van Damme's production company. So he wrote the scripts for Death Warrant and Kickboxer 2. He had a fun story in the Wikipedia where he used his money from his sale of Death Warrant to buy a brand new Isuzu Trooper, which was stolen from him within hours. He said he parked it, he went inside to the store, and when he came out, his new Isuzu Trooper was gone forever. So that would be a major bummer. This is the first of 2 films that Goyer would write for Full Moon. The other is Arcade in 1993, which I've never seen, but I've always been intrigued by that one.
When we get to that one too.
So by 1998, though, Goyer would hit the big time with the double whammy of Blade and personally one of my very favorite movies, Dark City, Alex Proyas's Dark City, which I think is an incredible film. From there, he would go on to write the entire Blade trilogy, which caught the eye of Christopher Nolan, who hired him to write on a little 2005 superhero movie called Batman Begins. And from there, he's basically been the story supervisor for the entire Nolan Batman trilogy, which are some of the highest grossing film franchises of all time. He would go on to land as an executive producer at DC and has a major hand in shaping the whole DC extended universe, what we tend to call the Snyderverse, but really it's kind of the Goyerverse. He wrote the screenplays for Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, and he kind of spearheaded the creative direction for a lot of those films. And in
Yeah.
addition to his film work, he has headed TV shows like Foundation on Apple Plus, Sandman on Netflix, and Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosity, as well as being a consultant on the Call of Duty video games. So the dude's rolling in it. The dude is very, very successful based off of this. And it just goes to show you how weird careers are, you know, like you never really quite know. And like you probably wouldn't have thought in a million years that the guy who wrote the critically panned screenplay for Demonic Toys would go on to have such influence. But
Well, this has to be the most prolific mainstream figure that we'll probably ever really talk about
Definitely one of them.
while we're doing this show. I mean, he's got to be up there because not
Except
only
for-
did the guy keep working, but
I believe Retro Puppet Master stars Meryl Streep. But other than that, I think that Goyer is probably the biggest name.
I mean, Helen Hunt has won some
Yeah.
Oscars and long-running TV show, and Tim
Yeah.
Thomerson as well. Also,
Yeah, I think we're going to find a few. I know looking ahead to Dollman versus Demonic Toys, Jackie Earl Haley's in that movie. Like there's some cool people in some of these. But yeah, Goyer is definitely one of the biggest success stories to come out of Full Moon. The director, Peter Manoogian, that's our first exposure to him. He directs many Full Moon and Empire movies. And seemingly half of the people that Charles Band has worked with in starting from the Empire era has worked on the film The Dungeon Master. And he is no exception. He directed one of the sequences in The Dungeon Master along with like David Dakota. And who else did we say? I think
David
Sam Irwin.
Allen.
Oh, yeah. Dave Allen did one in there.
Yeah.
He also worked on early Empire films like The Eliminators and Enemy Territory, which, of course, is the buddy cop movie starring Ghostbusters theme song singer Ray Parker Jr.
I cannot wait until we get to Enemy Territory.
I'm not afraid of that. Yeah.
Watching that movie makes you feel good.
It does, absolutely. And Manoogian also directed some early Full Moon hits, including Seed People and Arena, which I believe is one of their most expensive films ever. Arena was kind of a holdover from the Empire days. Curious to talk about that one. And Manoogian has not directed a film since the 2001 drama The Painting, which seems like a bit of a tonal shift for him. It's about like Vietnam and like race relations and like interracial couples and the tension that comes from that. So bit of a pivot shift, but he has not directed anything in nearly 22 years. So
do you think maybe that's because David S. Goyer had him blacklisted?
Yeah,
for changing the emotional stakes at the beginning of this movie and air quotes ruining it, which is the story apparently.
Is that really the story?
The story is that David S. Goyer hated Peter Manoogian because he quote unquote ruined the movie. I think David S. Goyer had a real vision of what he wanted this movie to be sort of ludicrous and over the top, which it is in spades in many ways. But the director was like, oh no, I want to play around and change the beginning of the script so that there's some more emotional attachment to these leads. And the changes that he made to it, apparently Goyer was not a fan and talked a lot of shit about this guy. And maybe he threw him under the bus a little bit, which maybe could have led to him not directing much in the last 22 years.
Well, I mean, in his defense, I will say that opening exposition is very clunky. It's the two people sitting in the car. It's like, as you know, we just moved in together. Also, we're partners, and I'm pregnant. It's basically like spelling it out just like that. It's like, oh, okay, so I'm caught up on this relationship. Oh, this guy died. So it really gets off and running. Before we get into kind of some of the other details about Demonic Toys, I wanted to ask Dan what your history with this particular movie is, because this was my first time watching. A lot of these movies are going to be first time watches for me, and this is definitely one of them.
Should not be shocking to the audience. This is not my first watch of it.
I mean, it's kind of a sport. Well, the box, of course.
Yeah,
but I think I recall seeing this on the Sci-Fi Channel, like watching like the last maybe 5 minutes of Demonic Toys as it went straight into Dollman versus the Demonic Toys,
right?
And the ending about the toy soldiers and stuff, and I remember being wowed by it. I'm like, I gotta see this. I thought I had just seen Dollman versus the Demonic Toys, in keeping with my watching a sequel before anything else. I saw New Nightmare before I saw any other Freddy sequels, by the way, as well.
I think I did too. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, but like that was basically the box art and the Sci-Fi Channel. Um, I definitely was familiar with Puppet Master. I, I don't think I knew they were connected until and I don't know how they bent the universe because the security guard was watching a Puppet Master movie
That's right.
on TV.
Yeah.
Puppet Master 2 to be exact.
Yeah, we got
okay.
a little glimpse of Charlie Spradling being hacked up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just knew it existed, and it seemed like a real movie as I encountered it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think I had a couple of presuppositions about this movie that were wrong. Like I said, firstly, I thought that this was a much more prolific series than it was.
I
Basically,
agree, yeah.
we get this movie in 93. We're going to get Dollman versus Demonic Toys, which is kind of a crossover, but really kind of coasting more off of the Dollman brand than the Demonic Toys brand. And then we get nothing for like 11 years. Like we get nothing in Demonic Toys universe until it gets revived for a sci-fi original movie called Demonic Toys versus Puppet Master. We get Demonic Toys 2 in 2010, so it takes all the way that long to get an actual numbered sequel. And then they just kind of dropped the Demonic Toys brand and made it the Baby Oopsie series, which is the other thing that I had presupposed about this movie. Like I always assumed the Jack Attack, the sharp-toothed clown Jack in the Box, I assumed he was kind of the focus. I assumed he was going to be kind of the lead toy because he's the one that draws your eye on the box. He's got the most distinctive design. But really, this is a Baby Oopsie movie.
Right.
And I think that's kind of my problem with this because I have to say I fucking hate Baby Oopsie.
Well,
Boo this man.
I don't know how to gender the doll because
Yeah.
I don't like I can use the they.
It's an it. Yeah.
Yeah, they are the most vocal. They have they have the personality. They're not just a silent killer or a monster or a robot that has laser beams.
This movie really owes a lot to Child's Play. I think like this opening sequence, especially like the cops chasing a wounded criminal into a toy factory, is the exact opening of Child's Play. Like it doesn't go exactly in the same direction from there. But, this does become kind of a single set sort of like chamber piece, which I appreciate. I like a good like single setting. I like a good siege movie, which is kind of what this turns into. And I think the coolest thing that this movie does is the kind of casual revelation that these toys are being controlled by this evil demonic child who speaks in an adult voice, which I have to imagine is like a nod to the Corbomite maneuver, the classic Star Trek episode with young Clint Howard, where like he's a all-powerful psychic child who speaks in an adult voice. Like I feel like that's got to be a nod to that, right?
Well, and yeah, it has to be that, but also if we're talking about Star Trek, I like how they have this child actor lip syncing these lines, and it's like, oh, he needs to sound very like matter of fact and stoic and tranquil, and he really just ended up sounding like Brent Spiner.
A little bit, yeah.
Brent Spiner and Brad Dourif in Exorcist 3.
A little bit, yeah. He's very, but I feel like that is kind of the most effective part of this movie is that demon child, because first of all, it gives a little backstory reason for why these toys are being brought to life, because of course a demon child would be drawn to demonic toys. But it's also just like an extra layer of weirdness and creepiness that I appreciated. And this is the movie that's also kind of cementing that Full Moon's thing is going to be little bitty guys who come to life. Like that's going to be their new brand, I think, because again, Charles Band is a really good businessman, a really good promoter, and he sees the possibility for action figures in these tiny little guys. And I think these are some great designs on these toys. But I was hoping for more. Like Baby Oopsie pulls so much focus. Like I wanted more of the Jack in the Box. I wanted more of the robot. I wanted more of the bear. Like I wanted more toys here to kind of split the bill.
Yeah, Baby Oopsie Daisy is the only one that gets named on screen.
Yeah.
like, because I thought like they passed by, it says TV robot, but I guess it's
Mr. Static, I think his name is.
yeah, something like that. I
It's
saw
one
on
of the
Wikipedia.
kill bots.
Yeah, yeah.
It's right from the set
And
of
then
Chopping
at
Mall.
the end, there's like let's get a bunch of more toys, I guess, as the demonic tower increases. But yeah, I'm glad I got this movie because not only did I get to watch whatever David S. Goyer pieced together from multiple concepts, but there was Child's Play, there was Dream Child, there was elements, like I felt like the beginning of RoboCop 2,
Yeah.
RoboCop also, and then I watched the Video Zone, which we can go into later. But Bentley Mitchum says, "Oh, there's elements of The Shining in it as well," and I'm like, "Okay, that's how it was sold to you."
Right.
Yeah. And also, apparently, according to the Video Zone, Baby Oopsie Daisy was meant to resemble Jack Nicholson.
I mean, look, I will say this. I think the puppetry work here is really very cool. I was definitely missing Dave Allen's like stop motion. I think he did a little bit of the rod puppetry for like the toy soldier at the end, but I was definitely missing some
Toy
of that.
Soldier looks good.
Yeah, I was missing some of that free floating, like free moving. These are very obviously like hand puppets, but Baby Oopsie does have a really gross like smear that I found to be very effective, and like as its face kind of starts eroding later in the movie, like it's effective. But I just couldn't get past the divide that this baby doll just sounded like a middle-aged woman. Just sounded like a very normal middle-aged woman's voice. Not really a lot of like mustard being put on there, like. It's with Child's Play, like Brad Dourif sounds like a movie monster just walking around in his daily life. He could be like ordering a pizza and he sounds really scary. And this voice does not really convey a lot of menace necessarily to me.
I think the foul mouth bit of it. I think that it was supposed to be shocking, which it kind of was, like coming out of a little thing.
I was going to say, I think Krusty the Clown spent more time on voiceover work than whoever was doing the Baby Oopsie voice. But
I forget the actress. It is the same woman who does Leech Woman for Puppet Master. I will say that. But that's really just gagging, vomiting sounds.
They had her for 25 minutes one day to do all of this, and it was just one take. But that being said, 27 years ago, 30 years ago, whenever it was that I saw this movie for the first time, and every subsequent viewing, of which there were a few, and this past time, I still laugh hysterically the first time Baby Oopsie Daisy speaks and just says, "Hey, you fat fuck."
I mean, no, I really did laugh at the shit your pants line. Like that got an actual genuine laugh. Some of the dialogue in this is really clunky and really awkward and very stilted, but that got a laugh out of me. And I do appreciate also that this movie kind of went for it with the gore in a way that, like, surprisingly, a lot of the full moon movies we've been watching do not really go quite as hard as this movie does. And I appreciate it. And like I said in the beginning, there is a weird preoccupation with cheek biting. Like I feel like each puppet bites a cheek at least once.
I thought people were being bitten in the neck and being incredibly persevering very well. I guess it is the cheek. That's something I missed, and I also missed when doors locked behind them because they appeared to be locked in rooms and telling us they're locked, but like they seem to have many ways out of them.
They've got ways around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there really is a lot of good stuff here. Like I was not terribly invested in the police detective storyline. We have Tracy Scoggins in the future to be of Babylon 5. And she's
Dynasty, I think is what she was on.
And some sort of spin-off. I thought the acting was good. Her especially. I mean, poor police work, it seemed like, but
poor police work, but again, similar to we talked about Ashley Lawrence in the Lurking Fear last week. It's similarly, she has a kind of a nice Linda Hamilton and T2 thing going on, which really works well. But she's kind of saddled this whole movie with babysitting this very generic, like Andrew Robinson in Dirty Harry, kind of mad psycho killer, who is just like hurling insults at her and always trying to break away, even though he's got nowhere to go. But yeah, she's kind of saddled with this guy the entire time, which is kind of a disservice to her. And really more character development gets put into the chicken delivery guy and the proudly slovenly security guard, which is a type we don't see anymore. Like, I wish we saw more guys who are just like, yeah, my entire thing is that I'm fat and gross and I hate everything and I'm very comfortable with it.
Two of
Well, I
my
think Better
favorite
Call
character
Saul,
introductions.
Oh yeah. What's that?
Better Call Saul. I feel Jerry from Parks and Rec.
Yeah,
I think filled that void.
they just own that. Yeah. But they have to be made a little like sweet, they need to be made kind of likable and earnest, and this guy's just like, yeah,
It's
I'm real gross.
abusive. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, look how gross I am. It's fun.
And then the guy who he's talking to, Mark, I believe his name is he is smoking a cigarette with one hand and then grabs loose pieces of fried chicken with the other hand to throw into this box to bring to the security guard. And I just got a good laugh out of that.
I thought the stick up his ass manager was totally right in the right on.
Yeah.
The guy I recognized him from Square One.
See, I recognized him as Pierce's dad on Community.
That's it.
Yeah, Larry Cedar. He plays Pierce's hyper racist dad.
Yes, with the ivory.
With the ivory. Yeah.
Headpiece,
Yeah.
Wait, Dan, was he the guy in MathNet?
I think so. I think like Square One people have like shown up on Seinfeld and stuff, but like that troupe like has
you just like blew my mind because I haven't thought about Square One in 30 years.
Yeah. So I mean, really, a lot of the plot here is just a bunch of people trapped inside the Arcadia Toys factory with this demonic child, and there's kind of a lot of convoluted reasoning behind what this child wants. So the Tracy Scoggins character, it's very clunkily revealed at the beginning that she is pregnant, and this child wants to inhabit the body of her unborn child, which he intends to do by, quote, getting on top of her and doing the nasty, which to me belies that he did not get proper sexual education, because she's already pregnant. It's already there. You missed the boat.
Yeah, I don't, the mechanics of that did not register.
But when is the last time you heard somebody use the phrase "do the nasty"? I mean, come on, that's a blast from the past. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they say it multiple times.
Yeah, out of a child's body comes that phrase.
Yeah,
I mean,
we get it as an adult at least once, but the first time I think it said when he's a child, and it's a very off-putting line.
I thought I missed something there, but I'm like, no, you just possess it. You're possessed. Demons possess. They don't do the nasty.
Yeah. Those are most of our characters we covered, except for Ceiling Orphan, like random Ceiling Orphan Anne.
People under the stairs.
Basically, we introduced this like teen girl who's been hiding out in the ducts of this factory. Like, she comes in like fully 2/3 of the way through the movie, and then she's killed off very quickly.
I mean, talk about a movie pulling influences from all over the place. Like, they clearly saw aliens. They just gave us Newt.
Well, they did. Yeah.
Where's Jonesy? I mean,
it's a Deus Ex Orphan, I guess. It's just like somebody who comes in to explain what the fuck's going on and then gets stabbed to death.
Her introduction is really funny.
Like, which I like was delivered with no emotion.
No.
And
yeah,
like a full 30 seconds before the eye is stabbed out.
Yeah. I mean, so there's not a whole lot else to really dig into plot-wise, just because it is a lot of hiding behind cardboard boxes and taking pot shots at these toys, and sometimes they slow them down and sometimes they don't, but it all culminates in a climax with Scoggins tied down inside a pentagram with the demonic child attempting to impregnate the already pregnant baby until and then we also have little seeds of what will again, spoilers if you somehow have not seen the finale of Lost yet, but kind of we're getting a proto Lost with these two little fighting forces that we're seeing. Like we have a good child and an evil child, and they're at constant conflict with each other and like always trying to one up each other. So, which does lead to some pretty striking like dream imagery, of the woman sitting in a room full of clocks while they play war on the floor. Like that's, I was watching, I'm like, all right, I appreciate they're going for like some surreality here in this movie.
Yeah, I thought that was effective. I thought the dollhouse was effective, and the wooden blocks spelling out stuff.
Yeah,
Rosemary's Baby esque, as was the flashback.
Yeah, this is a movie of ideas, and there might be, as this thing goes on, maybe too many ideas for one movie.
You could argue, yeah, maybe you could have spread a few of them out a little bit, but no, I think overall this one didn't really pop off for me as much as I was hoping it would. I think there's some potential in these characters. So like, I'm not writing it off. I do want to see, I'm especially excited to see where it goes when they collaborate with Doll Man, which is another movie I'm very excited to see. I've never watched that one either, but I know I like Tim Thomerson a lot from the Trancers movies, and I'm excited to see where that goes. But this one's just kind of meandering a bit. It's a little redundant, and then again, it's an exploitation movie, so like that's kind of built into the DNA of it. But I did find myself struggling to pay attention more than I have with other movies, especially of early Full Moon.
There were definitely gaps in the sort of slasher aspect. We spend a lot of time with Bentley Mitchum's character, the chicken delivery guy, and the security guard. Like, just
Well, who else is going to shout exposition at us?
well, there were plenty. I mean, it was in the car beforehand as the couple revealed the pregnancy, and the two gun runners.
Yeah,
Unprofessional at every level, between the no backup for the police thing and just I think that got me, just the shoddy police work.
yeah. Where the hell are their backup? Like they never got on the radio.
None
Just
of
like
the phones work. I think
No, they're just going in.
they were juggling a lot of balls, and a lot of them just fell away.
they're not picked up. Yeah.
Well, I think that's, if you look at, like, we've been describing the beginning of the movie and how weird and clunky it is, and I think there's something to be said for that, the kind of shift in tone and how oddly melodramatic the movie is in the beginning, to then getting into this toy warehouse with really what everyone's paying the price of admission for, which is to see what these puppets look like. So the emphasis that's put on the human interest story aspect early on is a bit jarring and is a bit out of place and doesn't really work. But so again, if you're coming into demonic toys, I think you want to judge this movie on the merit of the demonic toys. And I want to talk a little bit about a guy. So he played the life-size version of the Killer Teddy, a guy named Michael S. Deek, and he was a effects artist, makeup artist who worked for John Carl Buechler. And so he did a lot of the stuff on this movie, but he is a guy who just a name you'll see pop up in a ton of Full Moon and Empire things. And he also plays the titular cellar dweller when we get to that movie, and he plays a character in Arena as well. But he is basically one of the people behind Alchemy FX, and I kind of like how he talks a little bit in It Came from the Video Aisle about how he just happened to know a guy named John Vulich, who was working on Day of the Dead, maybe, I believe, with Romero, and they were buddies. And he met him while this guy John was doing some effects work on Friday the 13th Part 4. And he was just like, oh, yeah, come to Pittsburgh, work with me a little bit. I'll see if I can get you on the next movie I'm doing. And then it turned out that next movie he was doing was From Beyond.
Oh, wow.
And so this guy just happened to, he says that like he took on a big role in the FX department of From Beyond, and it was his third feature film he worked on. And so he just had kind of a nice storied beginning to his career, but then he would go on to just be really heavily used throughout classic Empire stuff and into Full Moon. And I think this movie is the right one to take a few minutes to highlight the work of some of these people who were involved, because with our Lurking Fear, we stepped away from that movie for a second to talk a little bit about some Lovecraft specifics. And with other movies where we felt like we maybe, we're going to end up doing a little bit of tangent padding while we talk about the narrative of the movie in general, we kind of decided to pick an element and discuss it a little bit. And so I think like this one is one where let's take a little time to talk about what works and what doesn't work in these creature designs and makeup effects, because I do think there are a couple cool things. I like the effect of the killer Teddy when it's small, biting the fingers off. I think I always like a good finger bite, and I think that one is done well here. And I think Jack Attack looks pretty good from time to time. I mean, we get a couple of puppeteer arms and frames in this movie.
And it has the globulous tail. Like I like the.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's like a scary clown is always good, as in Jack in the Box, which is like the most evil toy there is, just in terms of concept. But I like the idea of it's kind of a snake, and it has I just realized it's a rattlesnake because it's holding a rattle.
Did not realize that or make that connection.
Man, I hate that I realized it, and I hate that it was there. But like just the snake-like elements too. I think it looked pretty good. I missed maybe on my TV in SD quality any sort of arms or special effects mistakes.
It's a small note, but I do like that Jack Attack's like mouth has depth to it. Like you can see down his throat. That's always an effective puppetry trick for me, and it kind of goes a long way. And yeah, like I said, like I didn't love the baby Oopsie character, but I think the design is really solid. There's something really creepy about the way its mouth opens and like how it's missing some of its teeth, and there are more teeth in places where you don't really expect them to be. And like, so that
I like
that's
the
like
effect of the mouth moving. It's not like I guess it's not the most elaborate effect, but it's still effective in the sense that it makes me chuckle when I see the expression on on baby Oopsie change. And to talk a little bit more about Jack Attack, myself personally, there are few things that are more unsettling to me than the crank of a Jack in the Box moving on its own.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's like the easiest effect to pull off, but for some reason, like just that, especially when it's done to a certain speed and the music is kind of slowing down and you get that anticipation of when it's going to come out. Like, yeah, I don't like Jack in the Boxes.
It still is my least favorite fast food chain for that exact reason. Also because their tacos are terrible. But yeah, no, it's weird. It's like that's kind of the most effective thing in The Conjuring too. Just like a music box that is being played backwards and it's playing a tune that you don't usually expect to hear from a music box. No, there's something to that, and there is something to the idea of your toys coming to life and being evil and things like that. Like I think if maybe you not to backseat screenwriter this, but maybe like root this a little bit more in an emotional story about a child, like an actual child's attachment to their toys, because as much as we're using the image of a child, it's not really a child. The movie takes pains to let you know this is not actually a child. So I think you could root it in a child's bedroom, make that more the emotional story, like the toys are alive and the parents don't believe them, something like that. Yes, that's been done, but still, I think that would give this movie a little bit more emotional resonance, make it more about characters.
Yeah, I think this movie has a tough time sort of deciding who is the emotional avatar for the audience. I mean, I think when the characters are all introduced, it's clearly, pretty set up right from the get-go that it's supposed to be Tracy Scoggins. But then there is sort of, I think you you make a connection more from toys to children. So I think it would make more sense for this to be the plight of a child, since we're dealing with the toys more so than this woman who is pregnant and then her Deus Ex future child
Yeah.
comes into the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also I love demons possessing toys. That's probably one of my favorite subgenres. But just the way they I guess brand this demon and its powers just seems very odd. We get I mentioned the flashback before, where it's I guess basically the cult from Rosemary's Baby, having a miscarriage or stillborn demon, and then giving it to trick or treaters who throw it on the eventual site of the the warehouse. I don't think it was
Yeah.
a factory because it didn't really look like they were producing much. It just
Not
looked
really.
like they had like it was a storage facility.
Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah, the demon story. I mean, as creepy as the kid was, like it was just like, so blood helps you, and you want to be born. It's like
I guess
you can do a lot with the toys you got.
I also have to say I'm pretty tired of the trope of making a female protagonist pregnant as a way of trying to engender some sympathy, as if like that's the only value she can offer. Like it's something that happens all the way up to something like Evil Dead Rise, and it's something I think we need to let that trope go already, because there's more
Yeah.
to female characters than just that they can produce babies. Like we don't really need to saddle her with that.
Yeah, and there's other threats other than your future child.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about all the notes I had on demonic toys. Did we have any additional things to add before we move on to our letters segment, which is new this week?
Ooh, very
Wow,
interesting.
did you hear that, listeners? We've got a letter segment. That is
Wow.
new and fun and exciting. I think one thing I want to say about this movie is that I'm curious. I feel like going into this movie is sort of an oxymoron in the sense that there does, like you said, it when you first hear the title and you remember the cover art, it jumps out at you as like, oh, this is a much revered full moon classic with a huge footprint. But as we said before, it's really not. And this movie, I think going into it, I remember feeling like, oh, there's going to be so much here to talk about instinctively. And then watching the movie again and realizing it's like, okay, I can see where the seeds are being planted for this and that, but there's not a ton. And we've hit movies so far, not just Full Moon, but Empire, but Trancers and Puppet Master and From Beyond. Actually, all the first three Puppet Masters, all which offer something different and kind of equally satisfying. And Oblivion and these other movies that people really generally regard very highly among the Full Moon oeuvre. I'm really curious to hear listener feedback to an episode like this, because going into it, I sort of was of the mindset of like, oh, this is going to be a classic. This is going to be an all-timer. This is going to be, we're going to be so ready to go into this recording with so much to talk about. And then I was like, I wonder if I overshot this a bit. I wonder if people are going to comment on posts or send us emails saying like, yeah, Demonic Toys it's got a couple of cool moments of makeup effects and cool character designs, and it is sort of on paper like advanced Full Moon. Like we've been doing some Full Moon 101 episodes, and this is the advanced course in terms of premise, but it doesn't fully deliver on that premise in my personal opinion. And so I still had a good time watching it, but yeah, I feel like I instinctively was like, this is an episode people are going to be clamoring for. And now I'm really curious because I don't know if that's going to be the case. So I'm going to be really looking forward to listener feedback on what they think about Demonic Toys and what this film meant to them, and how they view it within the whole canon of Full Moon
Yeah.
and Empire Pictures, because it's not quite what I thought.
No, I'd be eager to get some context on that, like, because I fully admit there may be some context that I'm missing, and there may be something that is more exciting about this movie for fans than there was for me. But yeah, I think I came into this thinking that this was one of the major works of Full Moon, and I came away thinking like, oh yeah, this is a little bit more of a footnote than I realized.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree. I wonder if it's just based on seeing the box so many times, and for a lot of these full moon movies, like I think it's been mentioned on the podcast before that people thought Full Moon was uh like birthed in the 80s. I feel like
Right.
just because we saw these boxes so often every time we went to the Orwell, the video store, and kept seeing new ones, like that maybe it uh, had a life in our heads more so than actually um, in production. I
Yeah.
think Full Moon or Charles Band in general was one of those uh, filmmakers who would go to the Cannes and the film sales and just bring a poster and write the movie after. I think like Canon in those documentaries like did that as well, and I think that says a lot for the designers of the posters that they struck a chord, lived in our heads, and when you revisit them, you're like, oh, I guess not.
Yeah.
Well, David S. Goyer had struck a deal with Charles Band to write two movies for him under the caveat that he would be able to direct one of them. And he looked at a bunch of posters and was allowed to choose which ones he was going to do. And he chose this one based on the poster, and he was actually slated to direct it. And at the last minute, he ducked out because apparently there was some clause saying that, like, if you're going to direct this movie, you need to use my DP and my producers and my crew and stuff. And he was like, oh, well, if I'm going to direct this thing, I want to have freedom to do it the way I want to do it. And I think he felt like he was going to be a little too limited. And so he backed away from directing the movie. But yeah, I mean, that's how this movie was sold to him. Basically, Charles Band was like, write two scripts for me. In 1 week, he wrote the script in 1 week. And he basically said,
No.
yeah, I know it's hard to believe, but this script was written in 1 week, and that was how it was done. He saw the poster and went, "Oh, all right, I'll give this one a shot because
Hey,
it is a dope poster." And I will
admittedly,
say,
one of the better like cover arts of
yeah,
any of the movies of this era. Yeah.
and you know what other distinction this movie holds so far? This is the first movie that we have covered so far where I screened this with my own personal copy.
Ooh,
Okay. All right.
very
There we
nice.
go.
I screened this with my own personal copy, not on streaming. I've been using streaming more or less out of convenience to this point. And it's not fair to say Robot Jocks because I didn't watch it on the amazing Empire of Screams Enter the Video Store, Exit the Video Store. I forget the name of it.
Yeah,
Box
sure, yeah.
set, which has Robot Jocks on it. I've watched that and all the supplementals and dolls and all of that after the fact. This was
Yeah.
the first one where, in preparation for an episode, I said, let me pull out my trusty copy of Demonic Toys.
Which I assume was on a weather-beaten VHS that you watched on a 12-inch TV VCR combo, as is the way that this was meant to be watched.
The way God intended.
All right. Well, we have a letter from a listener today. This is the first time this has happened for us. I'm very excited. If you
Exciting.
want to send a letter to us, send it to puppetmasterscastlefreaks@gmail.com. We'd be happy to read it on the air. This one says, "Hey, Steve and Jared. First off, I'm having a blast watching through these movies with you and listening to your show. As a film major, I've been deeply entrenched in the classics, but I have had little exposure to exploitation cinema, minus watching Reanimator and Night of the Living Dead for my horror movie class. As a horror fan, though, I have watched countless shitty straight-to-video Hellraiser sequels and similar fare. So thank you for introducing me to Charles Band's specific flavor of B-movie, because I can confidently say that there is more love and enthusiasm put into any Full Moon or Empire feature than Children of the Corn 5. My big question for you two is, why is Robot Jocks excluded from your rankings? To me, Robot Jocks is the most fun I've had watching along with the show, just barely beating Transfers in Oblivion. Anyway, I love your show and I miss Ultra 64. Sincerely, Pappy H. Ultra 64 was my previous show where we played every Nintendo 64 game. Thank you very much for listening to that, by the way. And I figured this was a good opportunity to clarify why our rankings kind of come and go on the show. It's just because we've been recording out of order, and we didn't want to list where an upcoming movie has landed on the list when we haven't quite gotten to it yet. But I think at this point we are up to date, so I figure we can transition into our rankings now. We'll just give our full list here updated with Robot Jocks and the other movies included. So if you wanted, we can do that really quick.
Yeah, we can do that. And you should have, and first of all, thank you very much for the letter. It's great to know that there are people who are listening to the show, that there are people who are experiencing Charles Band and Empire and Full Moon for the first time and getting to watch along with these movies for the first time. I mean, that's really, it means a lot to us that you're putting in the time and spending the time with us. And we love doing the show. So it's really rewarding to hear that there's people that are enjoying the episodes that we're putting out there for you.
Absolutely.
And I'm ready to be, but I think by this point, by the time you hear the letter being read, you will have heard Robot Jocks in our ranking.
Yeah.
But we can.
Yeah, we'll clarify again real quick, because at the moment we have 16 movies on the list, so that's not like a horribly long list to read. In time, this list is going to get a little out of control, and we don't want to read like 100-something movies off of this list. So I'm going to create a Letterboxd account that I'll link to in our show notes, and you can check out our full rankings there, and we'll keep kind of an ongoing total going. Currently, my list from top to bottom, from best to worst, I have From Beyond at number 1, followed by Puppet Master 3, Toulon's Revenge. Then at number 3 is Robot Jocks. I agree, a very fun time. Trancers comes after that. Then Tourist Trap, Oblivion, Puppet Master 2, Original Puppet Master right below that, Subspecies under that, Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death, Lurking Fear, and then right below there is where I'm going to slot Demonic Toys. Sorry if I'm being overly harsh on Demonic Toys. I may reassess this at some point, but it just did not quite gel for me this time. But it does rank higher than Piranha Women at number 13, Sorority Babes and Slimeball Bolorama, Test Tube Teens from the year 2000, and still taking up space at the bottom of the list is Evil Bong. And I think it's going to be comfortably low on the list for a long time.
This is not great radio, but listeners, Dan was just nodding along to all of these as they were being read by Steve. And when Steve said the words "evil bong," Dan just nodded in agreement. You know, it's like, not that you guys can see that, but I thought you would like to know that.
I was ready to do thumbs down. I'm like, that would be unprofessional.
No, I welcome the criticism.
Yeah, so
I think we're still pretty similar.
We're pretty similar in that I've got From Beyond at number 1 and Puppet Master 3, Toulon's Revenge at number 2. I have Trancers at number 3 and Robot Jocks at number 4. Right behind that, I have Tourist Trap, followed by Oblivion. Then I've got Puppet Master 2, followed by Puppet Master 1. Then here's where we deviate a little bit. Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death for me just beats out the first Subspecies.
Okay.
Only because I think it's a little bit more effective in what it wants to do.
I'll grant that, yeah.
Then I've got Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bolorama, Lurking Fear, and Demonic Toys sliding right in under Lurking Fear, similar to you.
Yeah.
And then we share a bottom 3 of Piranha Women, Test Tube Teens from the year 2000, and Evil Bong.
Yep. I think those are safely ensconced down there. I really hope there aren't many movies that are worse than the first Evil Bong, but I know we have a long road ahead of us, and some of them,
Evil Bong.
We have 8 more Evil Bongs. We had a guest recently tell us that that first one is the highlight, so we're gonna dig into that. We're gonna dig into it.
Okay, so Dan, now it's your turn, but what you have to do is you have to rank our episodes on these movies.
Oh God!
No, I'm just
we can't put.
I'm just kidding.
Like
I'm just kidding.
You guys are way in the future right now. This is weird. Spaceballs watching the.
I know.
VHS
it's our past and Dan's future. We're in some weird vortex. But no, Dan, do us a favor and tell the listeners where they can find your writing. Tell us if you got something new that's out that you want to highlight and plug. Take a minute or two to let people know where they can find you and what they should look for.
Well, I found myself a niche and bricked myself in. But yeah, I most frequently write for Hard Drive and the Hard Times, which are sort of onion-esque satire on punk music and video games. I'd recommend following them on social media just in general. And then there's a lot of great writers on there. And then I would recommend clicking the articles. There's great headlines, but the articles themselves are also great. I recently, and who knows when this will drop, but I recently submitted a ranking of the Replacements albums.
Nice.
I'm worked hard on that, so I'm happy with that. But otherwise, just Dan Bookbinder, spelled like these words are spelled on Instagram is probably the best place to find me. So I appreciate being on the episode. Thanks so much.
We were so excited to have you. I'm actually a huge fan of Hard Times and Hard Drive. I think generally some of the bigger laughs I get scrolling the internet. Usually it's my girlfriend to look over me if I'm laughing at something. It's a Hard Drive headline that she doesn't understand, but I'm like all the way in.
Yeah. I get the same experience as an elder millennial / very young Gen Xer, and sort of the in between years. There's a lot of times when I'll read one of the Hard Times headlines and I'll go, God, just at me next time.
I think, see, I don't like that. I don't like either of those terms, baby Gen Xer or elder millennial. I think we should just be the baby oopsie generation from now on. I think that makes sense. I think that's the defining figure of our generation.
We can all shit our pants, which we determined.
We definitely can. So thank you again to Dan for being here, and we've got a episode coming up next week that I think we're both pretty excited for, and I'm gonna go ahead and predict this for better or for worse, horniest episode of Puppet Masters Castle Freaks, because we are going to be talking about a movie called Meridian Kiss of the Beast, which is kind of like an erotic take on Beauty and the Beast with Sherilyn Fenn from Twin Peaks, which I think we're all
Spradling.
all of us in the baby oopsie generation are big crushes on all of the ladies of Twin Peaks. So I'm excited to get into that one. Another movie I've not seen. So yeah, excited to get into it.
I've seen that movie precisely one time.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to revisiting it for our discussion. In the meantime, if you've liked all of the episodes that you have heard so far of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, which, we're starting to get letters from fans now. So that means that there are people out there who are digging what we're doing. You can jump on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening and drop us a quick 5-star rating. If you feel so inclined, you can leave a nice review as well. And if you want to follow us on our social media to see what is happening with the show, you can follow the show's official Instagram at puppetmasters_Castle Freaks. You can follow me at _cowboy_Jerry. A lot of times I post stuff on my personal account about the show as well, including information and updates, anything that we have going on. Steve, where can they find you?
You can find me at Minotaur Matador on Instagram and on Threads. That's mostly where I exist if I'm on social media at all, which is intermittent and usually just kind of as a lurker / observer. I'm a lurking fear on most internet forums. And you can also find my other podcast. It's called Cinemarcade, and that's the podcast where we watch a movie and then play the video game based on it and discuss both to see how they interact and complement or don't complement each other. Lots of fun stuff there. And as previously mentioned, I have a show called Ultra 64. We ran that for about 5 years. We covered all the games of the N64 and then all the games of the Wii U. So 2 complete game catalogs. That show is still out there for anyone who wants to listen, as well as Patreon content, patreon.com/Ultra64pod, an additional 100-something episodes on there as well. So lots and lots of ways to hear my lovely voice if you're interested in doing so. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening, and try not to shit your pants.
But thank you for being our special friends. So long, everybody.